I signed the contract to save my brother's life, but I didn't realize I was also signing away my heart. Randy Blackwood needed a fake girlfriend to save his empire, and I needed the money. The rule was simple: no catching feelings. But after one night in the Hamptons, the no-touching clause didn't just break, it shattered. Now the deal is almost over, and I'm realizing the only thing more dangerous than losing the money is actually losing him. The contract was 30 pages long, bound in a sleek leather folder that felt heavier than it actually was. I sat across from Randy Blackwood, a man whose face was plastered on every business magazine in the country and whose heart was rumored to be made of the same cold steel as his skyscrapers. He didn't look like a man who needed a girlfriend. He looked like a man who needed a queen, or perhaps just a very expensive distraction. "The terms are simple, Alice," he said, his voice a low, smooth baritone that made the fine hairs on my arms stand up. 6 months. You attend every gala, every family dinner, and every press event on my arm. You smile when I smile. You look at me like I'm the only man in the world. In exchange, your brother's medical debts vanish, and you walk away with $1 million in a trust. "And the no-touching rule?" I asked, my voice trembling only slightly. Randy leaned forward, the scent of expensive cologne and old money filling the space between us. "In public, we are inseparable. Hand-holding, waist-clasping, the occasional kiss for the cameras. In private, we are strangers who happen to share a zip code. I don't do messy, Alice, and I certainly don't do feelings." I looked at the pen in my hand. My brother was dying without the surgery he needed. Randy needed a stable image to secure a merger that would define his legacy. It was a business transaction, pure and simple. I signed my name in neat, cursive letters, not realizing that I wasn't just signing a contract. I was signing away the only life I had ever known. As I looked up, I caught a glimpse of something in Randy's eyes, a flicker of something dark and hungry that vanished before I could name it. "Welcome to the family, Alice," he whispered, his hand catching mine to seal the deal. His skin was warm, a sharp contrast to the coldness of his words, and for the first time in my life, I felt a spark of danger that I didn't want to run away from. The dress cost more than my entire education. It was a deep, midnight blue silk that clung to every curve, making me feel exposed and powerful all at once. Tonight was the Blackwood Foundation Gala, our debut as a couple. My heart was thundering against my ribs as the limo pulled up to the red carpet. "Breathe, Alice," Randy said, his hand resting firmly on my thigh. "You're overthinking it, just look at me. Ignore the flashes." As the door opened, the wall of sound hit me first, reporters screaming his name, the blinding white light of 100 cameras. I stumbled slightly, but Randy was there instantly. His arm slid around my waist, pulling me flush against his side. The heat of his body was grounding. I looked up at him, remembering the contract, and forced a dazzling smile. To the world, we were the picture of a perfect romance. He leaned down, whispering something into my ear that looked like a secret endearment, but his words were strictly tactical. "Smile wider. The lady in the red dress is from the Times. She's looking for a crack in the armor. Give her nothing." But as we moved through the ballroom, something shifted. We were dancing, his hand splayed across the small of my back, his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that didn't feel like acting. The music was a slow, sweeping waltz, and for a second the room vanished. The way he held me, firm, possessive, yet strangely gentle, started to blur the lines. I found myself leaning into him, my hand moving from his shoulder to the nape of his neck. "You're a very good actress," he murmured, his breath brushing my temple. "Is that all this is?" I whispered back, the words out before I could stop them. Randy's grip tightened for a fraction of a second, his gaze dropping to my lips. For a heartbeat, I thought he was going to break his own, no feelings rule right there on the dance floor. But then he blinked, the icy mask returning. "That's exactly what this is. Don't lose the script, Alice." Living in Randy's mansion was like living in a museum. Everything was beautiful, expensive, and untouchable, including him. We spent our days together for the sake of the staff and the paparazzi, but at night we retreated to our separate wings. Or at least we were supposed to. 1 week into the arrangement, I found myself unable to sleep. I wandered down to the kitchen for a glass of water, only to find Randy sitting in the dark library, a single lamp illuminating a glass of amber liquid and a stack of old photographs. He didn't have his suit on. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, his hair tousled. He looked human. "Who is she?" I asked softly, nodding toward the photo in his hand. He didn't jump. He just sighed, a sound so heavy it seemed to fill the room. "My mother. She died in this house when I was 10. My father spent the rest of his life trying to build a fortress so large that grief couldn't find him. I think I've just been continuing his work." I walked over and sat on the edge of the desk. "You don't have to build walls with me, Randy. The contract says we pretend in public, but it doesn't say we have to be enemies in private." He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in the steel. "If I let you in, Alice, I won't be able to let you go when the 6 months are up. And I'm a man who always honors his contracts." "Maybe some contracts are meant to be renegotiated," I whispered. He reached out, his fingers grazing the hem of my silk robe. The air between us turned electric, heavy with the weight of things unsaid. He stood up, towering over me, his presence overwhelming. "Go to bed, Alice, before I forget why I hired you in the first place." I left, but I could feel his gaze burning into my back all the way up the stairs. The strangers we were supposed to be were disappearing, replaced by something far more dangerous. To solidify our romance for the skeptics, Randy decided we needed a getaway to his private estate in the Hamptons. It was a sprawling beach house, isolated from the prying eyes of the city. No cameras, no press, just us. "Why are we here if there's no one to watch?" I asked as we walked along the shoreline, the salty wind whipping my hair across my face. "The best lies are built on a foundation of truth," Randy replied, his hands tucked into his pockets. "If we're going to convince the world we're in love, we need to know each other. Truly." We spent the weekend doing things that weren't in the contract. We cooked dinner together, laughing when he accidentally burned the risotto. We talked about our childhoods, our fears, and the dreams we had before life got in the way. He told me about the pressure of the Blackwood name. I told him about the night I realized I'd do anything to save my brother. That evening, we sat on the deck, wrapped in a single oversized blanket as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gold. The pretense was gone. There was no one to perform for. Yet his arm was around my shoulder, and I was tucked into his side as if I belonged there. "Alice," he said, his voice barely a whisper over the crashing waves. "I've spent my whole life making deals, calculating risks, but you're the one variable I can't predict." He turned to me, his hand cupping my cheek. The kiss was inevitable. It started slow, a tentative exploration, but quickly deepened into something desperate and hungry. It wasn't a performance for a camera. It was a confession. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with a mixture of longing and fear. "6 months isn't going to be enough," he rasped. And in that moment, I knew I didn't want to leave. I wanted the fake life to be my real one. Back in the city, the heat between us was impossible to ignore. The mansion no longer felt like a museum. It felt like a pressure cooker. Every fake touch in public felt like a promise of what was waiting for us behind closed doors. One night, after a particularly grueling dinner with his board members, the tension finally snapped. We walked through the front door, and before the butler could even take our coats, Randy had me pinned against the mahogany door. "Tell me to stop," he groaned, his lips inches from mine. "Tell me this is just the contract and I'll walk away." "I can't," I whispered, my hands tangling in his hair. "Because it isn't." He didn't need another word. He swept me up into his arms and carried me to his master suite. The room was bathed in the soft glow of the city lights outside. As he laid me down on the bed, the reality of what we were doing hit me. This was the man I was supposed to be pretending with. But as he stripped away his shirt, revealing the hard, scarred lines of his body, I realized I'd never been more certain of anything. When we made love that night, it was an emotional tidal wave. It was a release of every hidden glance, every suppressed urge, and every secret we'd shared in the dark. It was intense, visceral, and beautiful. In the quiet aftermath, as I lay with my head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, I felt a terrifying sense of belonging. "Randy," I asked softly into the dark. Yeah. What happens when the 6 months are over? He went still, his grip tightening around me. I don't know, Alice, but I do know that I'm not letting you walk away without a fight. But as I drifted off to sleep, I didn't see the shadow standing in the doorway, the shadow of his past that was about to turn our fake world into a nightmare. The bliss of the previous night was shattered at breakfast. I walked into the dining room to find a woman sitting in my chair, sipping tea as if she owned the place. She was elegant, older, and had the same piercing blue eyes as Randy. Alice, this is my stepmother, Beatrice, Randy said, his voice returning to that cold, guarded tone I hadn't heard in weeks. Beatrice smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. So, this is the little arrangement I've been hearing about. Charming. Tell me, dear, how much is he paying you to pretend you can stand him? My heart plummeted. She knew. Beatrice, that's enough, Randy warned. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Randy. I'm just here to remind you of the morality clause in your father's will. If this relationship is found to be a fraud before the merger is finalized, you lose everything. The company, the house, the Blackwood name, it all goes to me. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. I'll be watching you both, very closely. One slip-up, one moment of ungirlfriend-like behavior, and you're both on the street. She walked out, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and poison in her wake. Randy slammed his fist against the table, the silver rattling. She's been looking for a way to get me out for years. This was supposed to be a foolproof plan. We just have to be more careful, I said, reaching for his hand. He pulled away, his face a mask of stone. Careful, Alice, she's right. If we get caught, I lose my father's legacy, and you lose the money for your brother. He looked at me, and for the first time there was a distance between us that felt like a canyon. We need to go back to the original plan. No more private moments. We act our parts and nothing more. The next 2 weeks were torture. Randy had retreated back into his shell, colder and more distant than ever. We were back to being strangers who shared a bed only when Beatrice was visiting. The warmth of the Hamptons felt like a dream I'd had a lifetime ago. I was at the hospital, sitting by my brother's bed when my phone buzzed. It was a photo from an anonymous number. It was a picture of me and Randy in the Hamptons, the kiss on the deck. But the caption made my blood run cold. How much for the silence, Miss Vance? Blackmail. I couldn't tell Randy. He was already on edge, and if he thought I was a liability, he'd cut me loose to save the company. I tried to handle it myself, meeting the blackmailer in a dark park at midnight. But as I handed over the envelope of cash I'd scraped together, a familiar car pulled up. Randy stepped out, his face contorted with rage. Is this where the money has been going, Alice? You're working with Beatrice to bleed me dry. No, Randy, listen. I've seen the bank transfers. I've seen the meetings, he barked, his voice echoing in the empty park. I thought you were different. I thought for once someone wasn't looking at me like a paycheck. But you're just another deal, aren't you? I was trying to protect us, I screamed, the tears finally breaking through. They have photos of us, real photos. If Beatrice sees them, she'll know we broke the private life rule. Randy froze, the anger in his eyes flickering into confusion. You were paying them to stay quiet. Yes, because I love you, you idiot, and I don't care about the money or the contract anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. I turned to walk away, my heart shattered into a million pieces. I had broken the ultimate rule. I had fallen for the man who only dealt in fakes. The day of the merger was the most important day of Randy's life. It was also the day the contract officially ended. I stood in the back of the boardroom, my suitcase already packed and waiting in the car. I hadn't seen Randy since the park. Beatrice was there, a smug grin on her face. Ready to see the fraud exposed, Randy. Randy stood at the head of the table, looking every bit the king of the world. He didn't look at me. He looked at the board members. Before we sign, there is something I need to address. There have been rumors regarding my personal life and the validity of my relationship with Alice Vance. My breath hitched. He was going to end it. He was going to throw me under the bus to save himself. The rumors are true, Randy said, his voice steady. The relationship began as a contract, a business arrangement to secure this merger. A gasp ran through the room. Beatrice leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with triumph. However, Randy continued, finally turning to look at me, somewhere between the first gala and the Hamptons, the contract became irrelevant. I didn't just find a girlfriend, I found the only person who sees me for who I am. So if the board refuses to sign because I chose love over a lie, then so be it. I resign. The room went into an uproar. Beatrice was screaming about the will, but Randy didn't care. He walked through the crowd, straight toward me. He took my hand, his grip firm and warm. I'm done pretending, Alice, are you? Randy, the company. The company is just glass and steel, he said, pulling me into his arms. You're the only thing that's real. Randy lost the title of CEO. The merger went through, but under a new leadership team. Beatrice got the house, the cars, and the legacy she so desperately craved. We were standing on the sidewalk outside the Blackwood building, the rain starting to fall. You lost everything, I whispered, looking at the man who had once had the world at his feet. Randy smiled, a genuine, relaxed expression I'd never seen before. I have you. I have my life back, and I have enough in my personal accounts to start something new, something that belongs to me, not my father. We moved into a small, sun-drenched apartment on the other side of the city. No butlers, no marble hallways, just us. My brother had his surgery, and the recovery was going perfectly. For the first time in years, I wasn't scared of the future. One night, as we were unpacking the last of the boxes, I found the leather folder with the contract inside. I started to throw it away, but Randy caught my hand. Wait, he said. He took the folder and turned to the last page. Under our signatures, he wrote a new line, subject to permanent extension. Is that a new deal? I asked, a smile tugging at my lips. It's a lifetime commitment, he said, pulling me into a kiss that felt like a homecoming. No exit clause, no expiration date. But just as I thought our happy ending was set in stone, a knock came at the door. A lawyer stood there, holding a document that would change everything we thought we knew about the Blackwood will. The lawyer handed Randy a weathered envelope. Your father left a secondary instruction, Mr. Blackwood, to be opened only if you ever chose a person over a pillar. Those were his exact words. Randy opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a deed to a massive plot of land in the mountains, the place his mother had always wanted to build a sanctuary, and a letter. Randy, if you are reading this, it means you have finally found what I never could, something worth more than a name. The Blackwood Empire was a cage. This land is your freedom. Use it to build something that lives, not something that just stands. Tears blurred Randy's eyes. He looked at me, the weight of his father's expectations finally falling away. We're going to build it, Alice. The sanctuary she always wanted. A place for families, for healing, for us. 2 years later. The Blackwood Sanctuary was a reality. It was a sprawling, beautiful center for pediatric recovery, a place where my brother now worked as a mentor. Randy and I stood on the porch of our home, overlooking the valley. A small, dark-haired toddler was chasing a puppy across the grass, his laughter echoing through the trees. You know, I said, leaning my head on Randy's shoulder, I remember a man who told me he didn't do feelings. Randy laughed, pulling me close and kissing the top of my head. That man was an idiot. He had no idea that the best things in life are the ones you can't put in a contract. The fake girlfriend was long gone. In her place was a woman who had found her home in the arms of the man who had once been her boss, her rival, and her biggest secret. We had built a legacy that was made of heart, not steel. And as I looked at our son, I knew that the best deal I ever made wasn't the one I signed for $1 million. It was the one I made for love.